My name is Sarah. I'm 42 years old, and for the last 7 years, I've been a single mother to my incredible twin boys, Leo and Miles. Last week, my parents told me I was a selfish daughter and a complete failure to the family because I refused to cancel a career-defining business trip to Japan to babysit my 6-year-old sister's toddler for a week. They demanded I put family first, screaming that it was my duty and that I owed them. So, I did exactly that. I sent my family a highly qualified nanny to solve their problem. But what they didn't know was that my new nanny was also a trained paralegal with 15 years of experience. And she wasn't just there to watch the kids. She was there to deliver a message that would change everything, forever. If you've ever felt like you were giving everything to your family and getting nothing but demands and guilt trips in return, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And before I tell you how this all exploded in their faces, please hit that like button and subscribe. You're going to want to see how this story of obligation and entitlement finally ends. Before that fateful phone call that shattered everything, my life was a carefully constructed balancing act, built on a foundation of grief, overwhelming responsibility, and relentless hard work. 7 years ago, I lost my husband, Michael, in a car accident. He was the love of my life, my partner in everything, and the most incredible father to our then-infant twins. One moment he was heading to a client meeting, kissing me goodbye at the door, and the next, he was just gone. The world didn't just shift on its axis. It shattered into a million jagged pieces. In the silent, hollowed-out space he left behind, I had to become everything for our boys. Mother, father, provider, and protector. I poured my grief into the only thing I could control, my work. As an architect, I found solace in creating order out of chaos, in designing structures that were strong, beautiful, and built to last everything I felt my own life was not. I worked punishing hours, taking on freelance projects late into the night on top of my demanding job at a prestigious Boston firm, all to ensure my boys would never want for anything. We lived in a modest but comfortable 3-bedroom home in a quiet suburb, the same one Michael and I had bought together, dreaming of filling it with children. Every corner held a memory, which was both a comfort and a constant, aching reminder of the future we had lost. But my responsibilities didn't end at my own front door. I was also the primary financial pillar for my entire family of origin. My parents, Mark and Helen, had retired early on my father's modest pension. It wasn't nearly enough to cover the mortgage on their dated 4-bedroom home and their rising healthcare costs. So, I covered the difference. Every month, without fail, a significant portion of my paycheck went directly to them. I called it the family tax, a term I only ever dared to use in the privacy of my own mind. It was my duty, my mother would often remind me, to honor them for the sacrifices they made raising me. Then there was my younger sister, Jessica. At 36, she was still a self-proclaimed free spirit and a perpetually emerging artist. Her version of emerging, however, was entirely subsidized by me. She lived in a trendy loft apartment downtown, the rent for which I paid. Her high-end art supplies, her utility bills, her organic groceries, they all came from my bank account. She had a 4-year-old daughter, my niece Chloe, from a relationship with another artist who had vanished shortly after the baby was born. Jessica adored her daughter, but she had never held a steady job in her life, viewing a 9-to-5 as a soul-crushing cage for her creative energy. My family praised her constantly for her bravery and authenticity in pursuing her dreams, while my own career, the one funding those very dreams, was treated as a given. It was just what Sarah does. She's the responsible one, the sturdy one, the one who doesn't need praise. This dynamic wasn't new, it was the bedrock of our family. I was the sturdy, reliable oak tree, and they were the ivy, clinging to me for support while slowly, imperceptibly, draining my resources and my energy. The injustice of it was a low, constant hum in the background of my life. I remember a few years ago, shortly after Michael died, my 12-year-old Honda finally gave out. It was a safety issue. I was terrified of being stranded on the highway with the twins in the winter. I'd saved up just enough for a down payment on a reliable, used SUV. When I mentioned it to my parents, excited about having a safe car again, my mother's face fell. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful," she'd said, her voice laced with that manufactured concern I knew so well. "But Jessica's car has been making that funny noise again, and her tires are practically bald. It's just not safe for little Chloe." The implication was as clear as a hammer blow. Within a week, I was guilted into giving my repaired Honda to Jessica and draining my emergency savings to buy a newer, more expensive vehicle for myself because you can afford the payments, Sarah. Jessica can't. I was told it was the right thing to do for my niece. No one asked how I would manage the higher car payment on top of everything else. It was simply expected. Thanksgivings were the same. I would host, buy all the food, cook for 2 days straight while juggling the twins, and they would show up, eat, compliment Jessica on the one store-bought pie she brought, and then leave me with the cleanup. I rationalized it all as the cost of peace. I told myself it was my duty as a daughter and a sister. After losing Michael, the thought of losing the rest of my family was unbearable, so I paid the tax, both financially and emotionally, without complaint. I loved them, and I believed, desperately, that on some level, they loved me too. They just had a transactional way of showing it. But I had no idea the bill was about to come due in the most brutal way imaginable. The catalyst arrived on a crisp Tuesday morning in an email with the subject line, Project Kiso Nagano. Official invitation. My heart hammered against my ribs as I read it, my coffee forgotten on the desk. For almost 3 years, I had been the lead architect on a design proposal for a groundbreaking luxury eco-resort deep in the Japanese mountains. It was the most ambitious, complex, and creatively fulfilling project of my entire career. It was the kind of project Michael and I used to dream about over late-night glasses of wine. Our firm had been competing against some of the biggest, most established names in international architecture. And we had won. The email was a formal invitation to fly to Japan for 10 days to meet the primary investors, tour the site, and sign the final contracts that would officially make me a full equity partner at my firm. This was it. This was the moment I had been grinding towards since the day I buried Michael. It wasn't just a career milestone or a new title on my business card. It was a lifeline. Partnership meant a significant salary increase, true profit sharing, more control over my hours, and most importantly, the kind of long-term financial security that would guarantee Leo and Miles would have every opportunity in life, college, travel, a safety net. It meant I could finally breathe. I could finally stop the frantic, fear-driven hustle and just be. I read the email 3 times, tears blurring the words. I could almost hear Michael's voice cheering me on. "You did it, Sar! I knew you had it in you. You built this." The joy was so pure, so overwhelming. It felt like sunlight breaking through a 7-year-long storm. The trip was scheduled for 3 weeks from then. My first thought, after the initial wave of euphoria, was a practical one. The boys. 10 days was a long time. Who would watch them? My initial plan was to hire a highly recommended professional nanny service that specialized in overnight care for executives. It would be expensive, but for this opportunity, it was worth every penny. That weekend, during our obligatory Sunday dinner at my parents' house roast chicken, as always, I decided to share my news. Foolishly, I imagined they would be thrilled for me. My success, after all, was what kept their lives comfortable. It was what paid their mortgage. "I have some incredible news," I announced as we were clearing the plates, the boys having run off to the living room to play video games. I explained the project, the magnitude of the win, and the trip to Japan. I tried to convey what partnership meant, not just for me, but for all of us. At first, their reactions were exactly what I'd hoped for. My mother gasped, her hands flying to her chest in delight. "Oh, Sarah, that's just wonderful. Japan, how exotic." "You deserve a vacation." "It's work, Mom, but yes, it's amazing," I corrected gently. My father beamed, a rare, genuine smile cracking his usually stern face. "A partner at the firm? That's my girl. I always told your mother you were the smart one." Even Jessica managed a flicker of what looked like genuine happiness. Or perhaps just surprise. "Wow, Sar. That's huge. Congrats. You've been working like a dog on that thing." I felt a warmth spread through my chest. maybe I had misjudged them. Maybe they really did see me and appreciate my hard work. It's a 10-day trip, I continued, feeling hopeful, buoyed by their reaction. I was planning on hiring a service for the boys, but of course, if you guys were around to help out for a few of the days, that would be amazing. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. It was like all the oxygen had been sucked out. The warmth vanished, replaced by a sudden, sharp chill. My mother exchanged a panicked look with my father. "Well, that's complicated," she said slowly, wringing her hands. Jessica cleared her throat, placing her wine glass down with a deliberate clink. "Actually, I have some news, too. I've just been accepted into this incredible week-long intensive artist retreat in the Berkshires. It's a huge opportunity for me. A famous gallery owner from New York is going to be there scouting new talent." She looked at my parents, her eyes wide and pleading, completely ignoring me. "It's the same week as your trip, Sarah. It's non-refundable. I already paid the deposit. Mom and Dad already agreed to watch Chloe." My heart sank like a stone. The timing was, to put it mildly, suspicious. "Well, that settles it then," my father said, his voice taking on the authoritative tone he used when a decision had been made and no further input was required. He wasn't looking at Jessica. He was looking directly at me. "Your mother and I can't handle Chloe and the twins for 10 days. We're not as young as we used to be. You'll just have to postpone your trip, Sarah. Jessica needs this for her career. She needs a break. You can go to Japan any time." I stared at him, dumbfounded. The room seemed to tilt. Postpone it? "Dad, that's not possible. This is the signing. The investors are flying in from all over the world, Dubai, London, Singapore. It's a one-time event. This is my promotion to partner." My mother waved her hand dismissively, as if swatting away a fly. "Oh, they'll understand. Just tell them it's a family emergency. Tell them your sister needs you. Family comes first, Sarah. You know that." The casual way they erased my life's work, the culmination of 7 years of sacrifice, with a single sentence sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't a request for a favor. It was a declaration of ownership over my life and my time. And I was about to find out just how far they would go to maintain it. The days following that disastrous Sunday dinner were a masterclass in psychological warfare and emotional blackmail. My family, realizing I wasn't immediately capitulating as I had done for the last 2 decades, launched a coordinated campaign to bring me back into line. I tried to have a calm, logical conversation with my parents the next day. I drove to their house after work, armed with a folder containing my itinerary and information about the project. "Look," I said, spreading the papers on their kitchen table, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "This isn't just a trip. This secures my future, which means it secures our future. I've already looked into a fantastic nanny service for Leo and Miles. The boys will be safe and cared for. Jessica can still go on her retreat. Mom and Dad can watch Chloe as planned. Everyone wins." My father didn't even glance at the papers. He was staring out the window, a muscle twitching in his jaw. "Architecture is just drawing buildings, Sarah. It's a job. It pays the bills. What Jessica does, that's a calling. It's art. It comes from the soul. She needs this to find herself. You can't put a price on that." "I can," I muttered under my breath, thinking of the rent checks I signed every month. "I pay the price for it every month." "What was that?" he snapped, turning on me. "Nothing," I said, my voice tight, retreating. "My point is, my career is important too. It's what pays the mortgage on this house, Dad." My mother, Helen, chose that moment to deploy her favorite weapon, weaponized fragility and tears. Her eyes welled up instantly. "How can you be so cold?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Your sister is finally getting a real chance to make a name for herself, to provide a better life for poor little Chloe, and all you can think about is yourself and your fancy promotion. It's selfish, Sarah. After everything we've done for you, raising you, supporting you when Michael died, this is how you repay us? By throwing money in our faces?" I felt the familiar surge of frustration and helplessness. "What have you done for me?" I wanted to scream. "I support all of you. I pay for everything." But I bit my tongue. Arguing was pointless. It was like trying to reason with a brick wall that felt sorry for itself. When logic and guilt didn't work, they escalated. They brought in the flying monkeys, the extended family. My Aunt Linda called me 2 days later. "Sarah, your mother is just beside herself," she chided. "She says you're abandoning Jessica when she needs you most. You know how fragile your sister is. You're the strong one. It's your job to look after her. Can't this Japan thing wait?" The manipulation was so blatant, yet a part of me still flinched. The programming ran deep, but the lowest blow came that weekend. They brought up Michael. I was on the phone with my mother, trying once again to explain that I could not simply cancel Japan, when she said it. Her voice dropped to a low, sorrowful tone, dripping with fake piety. "I just wonder what Michael would think of all this," she sighed. "He was always so family-oriented. He cherished family above all else. I think he would be ashamed to see you choosing a business trip over your own sister and your niece. He would want you to be there for them." The line went silent as her words sank in like poisoned darts. Using my dead husband's memory against me was a new level of cruelty. It was a violation. Michael was the one who had encouraged my ambition, who had believed in my talent when I doubted myself. He would have been the first person to book my flight to Japan himself. They were twisting his memory, the best man I had ever known, into a weapon to hurt me and keep me compliant. And it was unforgivable. That evening, I met my friend and colleague, David, for a drink. He was the only other person at the firm who knew the full scope of the Japan project and what it meant to me. I unloaded the whole sordid story, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and despair. He listened patiently, his expression growing darker with every detail. When I finished, he shook his head slowly. "Sarah, this isn't a family asking for a favor," he said, his voice firm. "This is a parasitic relationship. They're not asking you to help. They're demanding you set yourself on fire to keep them warm. There's a huge difference. And bringing Michael into it? That's sick." Hearing someone else articulate my deepest fears was a profound relief. It wasn't just me. I wasn't being selfish or oversensitive. The situation was as toxic as I felt it was. David's validation was the armor I needed for the final, unmasking moment. It came the next day. I had called Jessica, intending to make one last, direct appeal to her, sister to sister. I was even going to offer to pay for her to attend a different, even better, artist retreat later in the year if she would just reschedule this one. As the phone rang, I could hear a muffled voice in the background before she answered. "Hello?" she said, sounding slightly out of breath and giggly. "Jess, it's me," I began. "Listen, I've been thinking—" "Hang on a sec, babe," she said, not to me. I could hear her covering the receiver, but not very well. Her voice came through, muffled but clear. "No, it's just Sarah again. I know, right? I can't believe she's still putting up a fight. It's kind of pathetic. Just a few more days of the poor, stressed, struggling artist routine and she'll cave. She always does. She's such a pushover." There was a man's laugh in the background. "Yeah, this retreat is going to be amazing. A week in the mountains with you? Way better than slinging paint for some stuffy gallery owner. She's so clueless. She's literally paying for the gas to get us there." A wave of cold, crystalline fury washed over me. It wasn't a retreat. It wasn't a career opportunity. It was a vacation with her new boyfriend. The gallery owner, the huge opportunity, the deposit, all of it was a lie. A calculated, callous deception designed to manipulate me into sacrificing the most important moment of my career so she could go have a romantic getaway. She came back on the line, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Sorry about that. Chloe was just fussing." "What were you saying, Sar?" "You know I'm just so stressed about this retreat. My anxiety is peaking." I held the phone to my ear, the silence stretching between us. She had no idea I had heard everything. She was still playing the part, still trying to work the angles. Hearing that laugh, that casual, cruel deception, was like a switch flipping in my brain. The fog of guilt and obligation that had clouded my vision for decades finally cleared. They didn't see me as a daughter or a sister. They saw me as a resource, an ATM with a heartbeat. And I realized with a chilling clarity that resources can be depleted, or they can be shut off. After that phone call, something inside me shifted permanently. The part of me that had always sought their approval, that had bent and contorted itself to keep the peace, went silent. It was replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I stopped taking their calls. I responded to their increasingly frantic and aggressive texts with polite but non-committal answers. I'm considering all my options, or I am still working on a solution. My silence drove them into a frenzy. They were used to my immediate compliance, my desperate need to fix everything. My resistance was a foreign concept, a glitch in the family operating system, and they reacted by trying to force a hard reboot. The final, explosive confrontation came on a Wednesday night, 1 week before my scheduled flight. My father called. He didn't ask how I was. "We're having a family meeting," he announced, his voice leaving no room for argument. "At our house. Tonight. 7 p.m. Be there. This ends tonight." I knew this was it. This was their final push. Part of me wanted to refuse, to just stay home with my boys. But a stronger, colder part knew I had to see it through. I had to let them play their last card, so I could be certain, without a shadow of a doubt, that the path I was about to take was the only one left. I arrived at their house at 7 on the dot. It smelled the same as it always did, dusty potpourri and unspoken judgment. They were all there, sitting in the living room, arranged like a tribunal. My father was in his armchair, the patriarch on his throne. My mother was on the sofa, clutching a tissue, her face already blotchy from preemptive crying. Jessica was perched on the edge of a chair, looking like a martyr, her expression a careful blend of anxiety and artistic sensitivity. Chloe was nowhere in sight, likely already in bed or with a neighbor. "Sarah," my father began, forgoing any pleasantries. He leaned forward, clasping his hands. "We are deeply disappointed in you." I stayed silent, standing in the doorway, letting him talk. "Your mother and I have given you everything," he continued, his voice rising with theatrical indignation. "We raised you, we supported you, we loved you, and this is how you repay us? By abandoning your family in their time of need? For what? More money? A fancier title? Jessica needs you. Chloe needs her aunt. We need our daughter to step up." "I am not abandoning anyone," I said, my voice steady, surprising even myself. "I am going on a business trip that is crucial for my career. I have offered to pay for any and all childcare expenses. I offered to hire a nanny to help you with Chloe." "It's not about the money," my mother cried out, dabbing her eyes furiously with the tissue. "How many times do we have to tell you? It's about presence. It's about showing up for your family." "A nanny is a stranger. We want you. It's your duty as her sister." "You want me to babysit," I corrected her, my eyes locking onto Jessica. "So Jessica can go on a vacation with her boyfriend." The color drained from Jessica's face. My parents stared at me, momentarily speechless. I don't know what you're talking about," Jessica stammered, her eyes darting around the room. "It's an artist retreat. I told you." "Stop lying, Jessica," I said, my voice cutting through the air like glass. "I heard you on the phone. I heard you laughing with him about what a pushover I am. I know everything. There is no gallery owner. There is no opportunity. It's just you, him, and a cabin that I'm probably paying for." The revelation hung in the air for a moment, thick and suffocating. Then my father recovered. And what came next was the final, unforgivable blow. He didn't admonish Jessica for her lies. He didn't ask her to explain. He doubled down on his attack on me. "So what if she's going with a friend?" he roared, standing up, his face turning a dangerous shade of red. "The point is, she needs a break. A break from the stress of being a single mother. A break from the constant struggle that you, with your fancy job and your big house and your perfect life, know nothing about. You have a choice to make, Sarah. Right here, right now." He stalked towards me, his finger pointing inches from my face. "Either you cancel that ridiculous, selfish trip and stay here to take care of your niece, as is your duty, or you can consider yourself no longer a part of this family. You walk out that door to go to Japan, and you are on your own. No more Sunday dinners, no more holidays, no more phone calls. As far as we're concerned, you will have chosen your job over us. We will wipe our hands of you, We will no longer be your parents. And she, he gestured dramatically at a now smirking Jessica, will no longer be your sister. The ultimatum was so absolute, so grotesquely disproportionate, that I felt a strange sense of calm descend upon me. This was the moment of truth. They were threatening to revoke my status as a daughter and sister, the two roles I had sacrificed so much, and paid so much, to maintain, all because I refused to be their servant. They thought it was my greatest fear, but in that moment I realized it was my liberation. They had stripped away all pretenses. This wasn't about love or family. It was about control. It had always been about control. And they had just handed me the key to my own cage. I looked at their faces, flushed with self-righteous anger. They were so certain they had me cornered. They were waiting for me to break, to cry, to beg for forgiveness, and promise to do as I was told. Instead, I stood up straighter. "Thank you," I said, my voice clear and devoid of emotion. "You've made my decision very easy." I turned and walked towards the door, not looking back. The stunned silence that followed me out into the night was more satisfying than any argument I could have ever won. Walking out of my parents' house that night, I didn't feel sadness or loss. I felt a surge of cold adrenaline, a clarity so sharp it was almost painful. The war was over because I was refusing to fight on their terms any longer. But I wasn't just retreating, I was preparing for a strategic counteroffensive. They thought they had disowned me, but they had merely unleashed me. For the past 3 years, ever since the Disney World debacle where I paid for 7 people to have a vacation while I babysat, a seed of an idea had been growing in my mind. It was a contingency plan, a break glass in case of emergency strategy that I genuinely hoped I would never have to use. The constant financial demands, the emotional manipulation it had, all started to feel less like family dynamics and more like financial abuse. On the advice of a therapist I had started seeing after Michael's death, I began to document everything. My first step had been to meet with a financial advisor and an estate lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Evelyn Reed. I had gone to her initially just to update my own will, to make sure Leo and Miles were protected. But in the process, I explained my financial situation, my income, my assets, and the significant, undocumented financial support I was providing to my parents and sister. Evelyn's reaction was immediate and stark. "Sarah," she had said, leaning across her mahogany desk, her eyes serious, "you are not supporting your family. You are enabling them. And they are exploiting you. This is financial abuse, plain and simple. You have created a system of dependency that is unhealthy for them and financially perilous for you and your sons. If something happened to you tomorrow, your sons would be fine, but your parents and sister would likely try to challenge your estate, claiming you always provided for them." That terrified me. Together, we had created a plan. I opened a separate bank account and started funneling all support payments through it, creating a clear, undeniable paper trail. Every mortgage payment for my parents, every rent check for Jessica's loft, every emergency cash transfer for car repairs or medical bills was recorded. I scanned receipts for their groceries, their new tires, their vacations, all paid for by me. Over 3 years, the total was staggering, well into the 6 figures. Seeing it on paper was nauseating. The second part of the plan was more proactive. We established a formal, irrevocable trust, the Sarah and Michael Preston Family Trust. Its purpose was to provide for the basic health and welfare of my parents and to offer a safety net for Jessica and Chloe, but with strict, unbendable conditions. The trust would be managed by a neutral third-party administrator at the bank. It would cover my parents' mortgage, basic utilities, and pre-approved medical expenses. For Jessica, it would provide a modest housing stipend and a healthcare allowance for Chloe, but only on the condition that she was either employed at least part-time or enrolled in a vocational program. There would be no more cash for art supplies that turned into designer handbags, no more funding for a lifestyle she refused to earn herself. I had funded the trust with a significant sum, but the documents remained unsigned in Evelyn's office. I had held back, still clinging to the pathetic hope that my family would change, that one day they would see me and appreciate my support as a gift, not a tribute. That hope had died in my parents' living room. The morning after the ultimatum, I was on the phone with Evelyn at 8 a.m. "It's time," I said, my voice flat. "Activate the trust, and I need you to draw up the official notification letters. Also, prepare the full accounting ledger." "Consider it done," Evelyn said, and I could hear the approval in her voice. "Good for you, Sarah." But there was still the immediate problem. The boys. I still needed childcare for my trip. The professional nanny service was still an option. But after my family's performance, and their threats to cut me off, I needed more than just a babysitter. I needed an ally. I needed a fortress. That's when I thought of Maria. Evelyn had recommended her a year ago when I was exploring backup childcare options. "If you ever need someone who is more than just a nanny," Evelyn had said, handing me a card, "call this woman. She used to work for one of the toughest divorce attorneys in the city. She's a miracle worker." Maria Sanchez was in her late 40s, a former family law paralegal who had switched careers to become a professional nanny and household manager after raising her own children. She specialized in high-conflict family situations, often working with families going through messy divorces. Her references were impeccable. She was described as calm, firm, impeccably organized, and completely unflappable. She was, in short, the polar opposite of my family. I called her that morning. I explained the entire situation, holding nothing back. The financial dependency, the lies about the retreat, the emotional blackmail, the ultimatum, and my plan with the trust. I told her I needed someone to care for Leo and Miles, but I also needed someone who could handle my family's inevitable meltdown when they realized the Bank of Sarah was officially closed. "I need to know if this is too much," I said, feeling vulnerable. "They can be. Intense." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Then," Maria said, her voice a soothing, confident balm that instantly lowered my blood pressure. "Miss Preston, this is precisely the kind of situation I am trained for. Intense families are my specialty. Your children's physical and emotional well-being will be my absolute priority. As for your family, I will be a calm but impenetrable wall. They will have no access to the children's routines or your personal affairs. I will handle all communication. You go to Japan, you secure your partnership, and you leave the rest to me." A wave of relief so profound it made me dizzy washed over me. I had found my secret weapon. My plan was now complete, and it was beautifully simple. I would not engage with my family directly. I would not argue, I would not justify, I would not defend. I would let my actions and my representatives speak for me. The day before my flight, I would make my move. They were expecting me to come crawling back, begging for forgiveness, checkbook in hand. They had no idea what was coming. They thought they had taken away my family, but they had only forced me to finally build a firewall to protect the one that mattered most, the one I had created with my sons. I just had to get through the next few days of their smug, expectant silence. It was the calm before a storm they never saw coming. The day before my flight to Japan was a Saturday. I spent the morning with my boys, a bubble of peaceful normalcy before the storm. We went to the Science Museum, ate pizza for lunch, and talked about all the cool things they would do with Maria while I was away. They were excited. Maria had already done a 2-hour visit a few days prior, and she had won them over instantly with her calm authority and a promise to help them build a truly epic, structural sound Lego castle. At 4 p.m., Maria arrived. She was dressed in a simple, professional charcoal pantsuit, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her demeanor was warm with the boys, but utterly professional. She was a stark contrast to the chaos I knew was about to unfold. She greeted the boys, and they immediately dragged her off to their room to show her their Lego collection. My moment had come. At 4:30 p.m., I sent a single text message to the family group chat, breaking the 3-day silence. "I have a solution that I believe will work for everyone. Please come to my house at 5 p.m. to discuss. It's important." The replies were instantaneous. "My father, we will be there. I trust you have come to your senses and are ready to apologize." My mother, "Oh, thank goodness, honey. I knew you'd do the right thing. We love you." Jessica, "Knew you wouldn't abandon us. Make sure you have wine. See you at 5. Their smugness was practically radiating through the phone. They thought they had won. They were walking into an ambush of their own making, completely oblivious. At exactly 5 p.m., the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath and opened it. My parents and Jessica stood on the porch, their expressions a mixture of triumph and condescension. They walked in, expecting to find me humbled and apologetic. My mother even moved to hug me, but I sidestepped her. They walked into the living room and stopped short. Instead of finding me alone and ready to beg, they found me sitting calmly on my sofa. Opposite me was Maria, who stood up politely as they entered. A thick leather portfolio rested on the coffee table in front of her. "Who's this?" my father asked, his eyes narrowing with suspicion, looking from Maria to me. "This is Maria Sanchez," I said, my voice even. "She is a professional childcare provider. She will be staying here and taking care of Leo and Miles while I am in Japan." The air in the room crackled with tension. Jessica let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You're kidding, right? You actually hired someone? We talked about this, Sarah. No strangers. You're supposed to stay. Mom and Dad need you." "My trip is not up for discussion," I stated flatly. "Maria's presence here is to ensure my son's well-being. However, that is not the primary reason I asked you here." I gestured to the armchairs. "Please, sit down." Reluctantly, they sat, their eyes darting between me and Maria, confusion warring with their anger. "For years," I began, my voice clear and strong, looking at each of them in turn, "I have provided financial support to all of you. I did it out of love, out of a sense of duty, and because I wanted to help after Michael died. But over time, that support has become an expectation, and that expectation has become a weapon used to control my life. The ultimatum you gave me 3 days ago made that perfectly clear. That ends today." I nodded to Maria. She opened the portfolio on the coffee table and took out 3 thick, professionally bound documents. She stood and handed one to my parents and one to Jessica. "What is this?" my father grumbled, flipping through the pages. "That," I said, "is a detailed accounting of every dollar I have given you for the past 3 years. Mortgage payments, Jessica's rent, utilities, car payments, emergency cash, vacations. It's all there, documented with bank statements and receipts." Turn to the last page. I heard the rustle of paper, followed by a gasp from my mother. My father's face went an alarming shade of purple. $214,000, I said, letting the number hang in the air. "That is how much I have contributed to this family in just 3 years. While raising 2 children on my own." Jessica refused to even look at hers, throwing it back on the table. "What is this? An ambush? Are you sending us a bill?" "The second thing you will find in that packet," I continued, ignoring her outburst, "are the formation documents for the Preston Family Trust." I explained the terms of the trust calmly and methodically. How it would cover their essential needs, housing, utilities, medical, all managed by a third party at the bank. I explained the conditions for Jessica's stipend, contingent on her seeking employment or vocational training. I explained that all direct, undocumented cash flow from me was ending, effective immediately. No more Venmo requests, no more paying off credit cards. My father threw the document on the coffee table. "This is insane!" he bellowed, spittle flying from his mouth. "This is insulting! You are our daughter. You don't get to put conditions on helping your own family. Who do you think you are?" "It is not your money," I said, my voice dropping, becoming colder than I had ever heard it. "It is my money. Money I earned working 60-hour weeks while you were retired, and Jessica was finding herself. And from now on, my money will be used to protect my children's future, not to fund a lifestyle you feel entitled to." Jessica finally spoke, her voice dripping with venom, tears of rage in her eyes. "You are a cold, heartless snake, Sarah. After everything we've been through, you would really cut off your own sister? Your own niece?" "No," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "I am finally teaching you the lesson you should have learned a long time ago. Actions have consequences. Lying to me about a vacation to force me to sacrifice my career has consequences." That's when Maria stepped forward. Her voice was calm, yet it carried an undeniable weight of authority that instantly silenced the room. "I should also introduce myself more fully," she said, looking at my stunned family. "Before I became a child care specialist, I was a senior family law paralegal for 15 years. I am not only Miss Preston's nanny, but I will also be acting as the official liaison between her and the trust administrators while she is abroad. Any and all communications regarding finances, the trust, or the children are to be directed through me. I will be documenting all interactions." The revelation that the nanny was a seasoned legal professional was the final, devastating blow. The color drained from their faces. They looked like they had been slapped. They realized they hadn't just been outmaneuvered. They had been completely outclassed. They were not dealing with their meek, compliant daughter anymore. They were dealing with a legal firewall. My mother burst into tears. Real, desperate, panicked tears this time. "Sarah, please," she sobbed, reaching out a hand towards me. "Don't do this. We're family. We love you." "This is not a punishment," I said, standing up. "It is a boundary. It is what is necessary for me to protect myself and my sons. You will be cared for. You will not be homeless. But the days of me being your personal ATM and your emotional punching bag are over." I walked to the door and opened it. "My flight is at 6 a.m. Maria is in charge here. I trust you will show her the respect her position deserves." I turned to Maria. "If they cause any trouble, you have Evelyn Reed's number and the authority to call the police to have them removed." With that, I turned and went upstairs to check on my boys, leaving Maria to hold the line. I could hear their raised voices, their pleading, their anger. But for the first time in my life, it wasn't landing on me. It was bouncing harmlessly off the calm, impenetrable wall I had built. The confrontation was over, and I had finally won. The next morning, I left for the airport before the sun was up. The house was quiet. My family had left late the previous night after a futile and frankly embarrassing hour of arguing with Maria, who had simply repeated, "All financial inquiries must be directed to the trust administrator. Miss Preston is unavailable," until they had exhausted themselves and retreated in a cloud of impotent fury. Walking out the door, with my suitcase in hand and the porch light casting a warm glow on the quiet street, felt like stepping out of a pressure cooker I hadn't even realized I was living in for my entire adult life. The air itself felt lighter, cleaner. It tasted like freedom. On the plane, as we soared above the clouds toward Japan, I felt a sense of possibility so profound it was almost dizzying. For the first time in 7 years, I was just Sarah, not a widow, not a single mother stretched to her breaking point, not a family servant and ATM. I was an architect on her way to the biggest moment of her career. I opened my laptop not to check my bank account or respond to a passive-aggressive text, but to review my presentation. A focused calm settled over me that I hadn't felt in years. The background noise of my family's constant simmering demands had finally been silenced, and in that silence, I could hear my own thoughts, my own ambitions, for the first time. I looked out the window at the endless blue and whispered, "We're doing this, Michael." Maria sent me updates twice a day, as we had agreed. They were models of professional efficiency and understated wit, and each one felt like a bulletin from a distant, liberated front. Day 1. "Good morning, Sarah. Leo and Miles are off to school. Your parents called 3 times this morning and came by once unannounced. I informed them you were unavailable and that all necessary information had been provided in the packet. Your father was insistent. I maintained the boundary. All is well here. The Lego Castle Foundation is complete and has passed its initial structural integrity test." Day 2. Your mother called. She claimed she was having chest pains and needed her daughter. I offered to call 911 for her and asked for her address to dispatch an ambulance. She miraculously recovered and hung up. Jessica texted, asking if the trust could advance her next month's stipend for emergency car repairs. I referred her to the trust's formal application process, which requires 3 written estimates. I did not engage further. Day 5. Your father came by to inspect the premises and tried to enter the house, stating he had a right to see his grandchildren. I met him at the door and assured him the children were safe and well cared for. He attempted to question the boys about my care when they came home from school. I intervened and reminded him that all communication should go through me. He threatened to call his lawyer. I gave him Evelyn Reed's card and encouraged him to do so. He left shortly thereafter. The boys and I made homemade pizza. The house remains a calm and secure environment. Each message was a small victory, a confirmation that I had made the right choice. My family was testing the new boundaries, pushing against the walls of the new reality I had created, and the walls were holding firm. Maria was magnificent. My 10 days in Japan were a whirlwind of success. The project site in Kiso, Nagano was even more breathtaking, in-person misty mountains and ancient forests that seemed to hum with a quiet energy. The meetings in Tokyo were incredible. The investors, a notoriously tough group, were impressed with my vision for integrating the resort into the natural landscape. I signed the partnership agreement on the final day in a boardroom overlooking the Tokyo skyline, my hand steady as I wrote my name. I took a photo of the signed document and sent it to David with the caption, "It's done." His reply was immediate. "Michael is raising a glass right now. So proud of you, partner." And in that moment, I felt Michael's presence, warm and proud. Not the weaponized version my family had tried to use against me. When I landed back in Boston, I was a different woman. I walked off that plane a partner in my firm, secure in my future, and free from the crushing weight of my family's expectations. Maria had the house running like a well-oiled machine. It was spotless, the fridge was stocked with healthy food, and the boys were happy and calm. They rushed to hug me, babbling about the museum and the park, and how Maria taught them how to make real tacos. The epic Lego castle was, indeed, a structural masterpiece that took up half their bedroom floor, complete with a moat and a functioning drawbridge. "How was it, really?" I asked Maria after the boys were in bed, handing her a small, intricately carved wooden box I'd brought back from Kyoto. She smiled faintly. "They tested every boundary, as expected. But they are learning. The volume of calls has decreased significantly in the last 2 days. Jessica submitted her application to the trust this morning, complete with 3 estimates. I believe they are beginning to understand that the old rules no longer apply." The initial aftermath for my family was chaotic. Without my constant, unquestioning cash infusions, their lifestyles came to a screeching halt. Jessica's landlord served her an eviction notice when she couldn't make rent for her expensive loft. She was forced to apply to the trust, fill out the paperwork, and agree to the conditions. It took her 3 weeks of sulking and angry texts, but she finally got a part-time job at a local art gallery, mostly administrative work. But it was a start. The trust approved a stipend for a more modest, affordable 2-bedroom apartment for her and Chloe. My parents had to create a budget for the first time in years. They were forced to downsize from having 2 cars to 1. They were furious, but their anger was impotent. They couldn't yell at a bank administrator. They couldn't emotionally blackmail a trust document. They were forced to confront the reality of their own finances, and they did not like it one bit. But the peace and quiet in my life, the ability to come home and just be with my children without a cloud of obligation hanging over me, was priceless. The new dawn was quiet, but it was bright with promise. 1 year can change everything. Standing in the living room of my new home, the chaos of the previous year felt like a distant, almost surreal storm. 6 months ago, I sold the old house. It had too many memories, both good and bad, and I needed a clean slate. Using my new partnership income, I designed and built a new house for us. It's modern, full of light and glass, with huge windows that look out onto a beautiful wooded lot closer to the boys' school. It's a physical manifestation of my new life. Open, honest, and integrated with the world around it, not walled off in defensive grief. We have a big kitchen island where the boys do their homework while I cook, and a cozy reading nook with a fireplace that has become our favorite spot on rainy weekends. The partnership at my firm has been even more rewarding than I'd imagined. It afforded me not just financial independence, but the creative freedom to choose projects I was passionate about. More importantly, it allowed me to set my own schedule. I don't work 60-hour weeks anymore, fueled by panic and obligation. I am there to pick up Leo and Miles from school every day. I help with homework. I'm the assistant coach for their soccer team. I am present in a way I never could be when I was constantly hustling to support 3 households. I feel like I'm finally the mother Michael and I always planned for me to be. Leo and Miles, now 8, are thriving. The stable, peaceful environment has worked wonders. Leo's anxiety, which had spiked after his dad died and was always simmering under the surface in our tense family life, has faded. It's been replaced by a quiet confidence and a burgeoning love for coding and robotics. Miles's boisterous energy is being channeled into soccer, where he is the star of his team. Our new house is our sanctuary, a place filled with laughter, the smell of baking cookies, and the happy clutter of 2 growing boys. We even got a dog, a goofy golden retriever named Buster, who has quickly become the furry heart of our little family. My relationship with my family has settled into a new, strange, but ultimately healthier equilibrium. The trust did its job. It was an impersonal, unemotional buffer that forced them to adapt. My parents have adjusted to living within their means. They complain a lot less, mostly because they know I won't fix their problems with a check. Our interactions are less frequent and far more formal. We have monthly dinners, always at a neutral location like a restaurant, where the conversation is kept light and superficial. We talk about the weather, the boys' school, their garden. The old dynamics of guilt and demand are gone, but so was any pretense of real warmth or intimacy. My father, in a rare moment of introspection, once admitted that he was impressed with my new house, a grudging acknowledgement of a success he could no longer take credit for. It was the closest I would ever get to an apology, and I had accepted it for what it was. The most dramatic transformation, however, was Jessica's. It didn't happen overnight. For the first 6 months, she was angry and bitter. She tried to fight the trust, tried to manipulate me through Chloe, but Maria and Evelyn held the line. Eventually, the reality of having to support herself hit her. Her part-time job at the gallery, which she initially resented, turned into a full-time position as a curator's assistant. It turned out she had a real eye for identifying and nurturing new artists. For the first time in her life, she was earning a steady paycheck, building a professional reputation, and experiencing the pride of her own accomplishments. She had moved into her new, smaller apartment and was managing her budget with the help of a financial counselor, a mandatory condition of the trust. Our relationship as sisters is slowly, cautiously, being rebuilt. It's not the old, toxic dynamic where I was the parent and she was the eternal child. It is something new, based on a fragile, emerging respect. She called me a few months ago, not to ask for money, but to ask for my opinion on a new artist she was considering for a show. We had a real professional conversation. It was a small moment, but it felt monumental. She was seeing me not as a resource, but as a sister, a peer. She had even started contributing a small amount each month to a savings account for Chloe's future, something she proudly told me about. She was finally becoming the mother, and the woman she was capable of being. Maria Sanchez has become an indispensable part of our lives. Her role had evolved from a short-term crisis manager to our permanent household manager and part-time nanny. Her calm efficiency created a bedrock of stability that allowed me to excel at work and be a more relaxed, present mother at home. She is no longer just an employee. She is family, a chosen family member who had brought more genuine support, respect, and peace to our home than my biological family ever had. She comes to the boys' soccer games, she helps them with their school projects, and her advice is always wise and measured. The justice that was served wasn't a punishment. It was the natural consequence of restored balance. By removing the unnatural, unhealthy support system I had provided, I had forced my family to stand on their own 2 feet, and in their own ways they had learned to walk. The system I had created wasn't about withholding love, it was about withholding the poison of enablement. It had been the kindest, toughest, and most loving thing I could have ever done for them, and for myself. Looking back on that tumultuous period, I realized the ultimatum my father gave me in their living room wasn't a threat. It was the greatest gift he could have ever given me. It was the moment the universe finally forced me to choose myself, to choose my sons, and to choose our future over their comfort. For years, I had operated under the false belief that family first meant Sarah last. I thought my worth was measured by how much I could sacrifice, how much I could endure, and how much of myself I could give away to keep others comfortable. I had confused martyrdom with love. I believed that setting a boundary was an act of selfishness, when in fact, it was the ultimate act of self-preservation and the deepest form of love for my children. The greatest lesson I learned had nothing to do with money or trusts or contracts. It was that true family doesn't demand you set yourself on fire to keep them warm. Real support isn't a one-way street. It's a multi-lane highway with traffic flowing in all directions. Love, in its healthiest form, is not about obligation, guilt, or dependency. It's about respect. It's about celebrating each other's strengths and supporting each other's growth, not using one person's strength as a crutch for everyone else's refusal to walk on their own. For years, I was the strong one, which I now understand is family code for the one we expect to have no needs of her own. By building that wall, by creating the trust, I didn't just protect my finances, I protected my sons. I protected them from growing up in a system that would have taught them that love is conditional, that it's transactional, and that responsibility is a burden to be exploited by those who claim to love you. Instead, they are learning that a home is a place of peace and safety, that a mother's strength is something to be proud of, and that family is defined by the quality of your relationships, not just by the ties of your blood. I am teaching them that it is okay to say no, that their well-being matters, and that the most valuable thing you can ever build isn't a skyscraper or a resort, but a life founded on dignity and self-respect. I broke a cycle of generational dysfunction, and that is a legacy far more important than any building I could ever design. My old family still exists, but it has been redefined on healthy terms. My new family, the one I built with Leo and Miles, with Maria, with friends like David who celebrated my success instead of resenting it, is the one that truly sustains me. It's a family built on choice, on mutual respect, and on the quiet understanding that we all have each other's backs, no strings attached. So I want to ask you, have you ever been in a situation where you were forced to choose between your own needs and your family's demands? Have you ever felt like your kindness was being taken for weakness, or that you were the designated strong one who was expected to carry everyone else's burdens? What did you do? And what did you learn from that experience? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experiences matter, and sharing them can give strength and validation to someone else who might be feeling trapped right now. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to put their own oxygen mask on first. Your peace matters. Your story matters. Building a boundary isn't an act of war. It's an act of profound love for yourself and for the future you and your children deserve.